when you're meeting your client and they say, you know what, I forgot my retainer, I forgot your check, I'm sorry, it'll come next week, but can we just make sure you go to the Crown pretrial? And then the Crown pretrial comes because you're a nice person, you've done it without the retainer, and then after that, you know what, I just had the check, I can call my mom, but you know what, I promise to get it to you the next week. Be careful of that. Obviously, that, given what your client's originally charged with, you may want to start saying, you know what, I'm not going to do anything until I see the retainer and it's in my pocket.
And I've talked about this before. I think that you have to see value in your own time, and you have to be able to accept that your time is very important. And if people are not going to respect the fact that your time is important and aren't prepared to pay for it, you know, people can negotiate. They can negotiate something that is a fair rate. You can do it at a reduced rate. But there's a difference between ability to pay and desire to pay. And you gotta avoid those that have lacked the desire to pay. Work for those, and when you choose to, for those that may have difficulty to pay because their ability is strained. That's a different situation. But be aware of the fact that in certain cases, many times with people charged with fraud or other financial crimes, when they start giving you the story, they don't respect your time. They don't respect you as a lawyer, and you have to ensure that you are the person running the defense with their instructions, but it's not the tail that wags the dog.
There are times when you may get a complaint from the Law Society about servicing your client. Your client decides that at the end of the day they want to complain about you because they just have their own agenda. It's really important when you're meeting your clients or talking to them on the phone that you keep notes. You may not, there may come a time when you need to be able to say, well, wait a second, no, on September 21st you called me, we did actually speak about this. I have a note to my file. It's an independent recollection, but I also have a note to my file when you're writing to the Law Society and explaining what's happened. So remember, it's really easy to say, well, you know what, it's all in my head, it's all in my head. 2 years later, when you're trying to correspond with the Law Society and someone's made a complaint which may be false against you, having your file fully documented is important.
And we have to borrow from the civil bar. They practice in such a manner, sometimes it's akin to, people say that it's just CYA, but they practice in a disciplined manner where their notes are wonderful. And you're only helping and improving your professionalism by taking those kind of notes. I'm still learning how to do that. I'm not good at it, but I recognize the fact that it's something that we need to do. And just want to share that with everybody. It's important to do.
When your client shows up and says, and there's a bit of a debate in my office over this issue, letters of support, so letters from employers, letters from family members, volunteer hours. Do you just simply say to your client, get this letter, bring it in, and then when you get to court say, my client has provided me with this letter, here it is, so that it's clear that you're not the one that got the letter in case there's anything wrong with it? Or do you take the time to verify? Call the person, have the letter perhaps addressed to you, and then you have a conversation with the writer of the letter to verify that it is in fact accurate. I think from an advocacy point of view, when you stand in front of a judge and say, I have this letter from Joe Smith, and I actually spoke with Mr. Smith this morning, he's verified not only the contents, but he's actually indicated to me the following. From an advocacy point of view, I think it looks good on your client. It's a real letter. You as a lawyer, a member of the bar, an officer of the court have verified it. It's got greater weight than, here, my client's just given me this letter this morning, here, have it. Well, you take a look at it.
There's also, the rule is interesting in that I think our practice is far beyond the rule. That most lawyers undertake and accept a greater responsibility because of their presentation to the court, and they want to ensure that they want to ensure that nobody's creating a falsehood upon the court. But what do you do? In today's age, with the internet, do you go online and do a reverse listing to see that that business actually exists? Sometimes you will receive a letter by a proprietor of a business who hand writes the letter and puts their phone number in. It looks terrible, but it might be completely authentic. So you have to ask yourself, what can you do so that when you present to the court, that your submissions are seen as credible, and the position that you take for your client is also seen as credible. So you may not only undertake the best practices, but go above and beyond. I often, when I'm in court, I do see people occasionally, they're asked by either the judge or the Crown and rightfully so. Did you check this letter out? You know, have you confirmed it? Are you sure that they've done these hours? Is this a legitimate organization? And you do not want to give an improper answer. So if you haven't done it and you're found in that position, you say, you know what, I dropped the ball. Maybe I should just give me a break, and I'll go and take the next 10 minutes, and I'll make the appropriate calls, or we'll adjourn the matter.
And there are some people will argue, like, how far do you end up going? Do you spend your afternoon Googling other people? Do you phone? Like, how do you know that the person on the other end isn't their best friend and they haven't created this letter on letterhead and are just answering the questions they anticipate? You know, are you telling your client, look, I don't trust you to get the letters, by having to verify the writers of the letters? There are some people that will argue, you know, I tell my client, look, the Crown may check up on this, so it better be a real letter is enough. You know, if you're in a busy practice, you may feel comfortable with that. But I do think if you are asked the question, and I'm not sure how appropriate it is of a justice to ask in an open court, is this a real letter or not, sir?
But they will ask, have you confirmed the letter?
They do. They do on occasion.
Yes.
So I think for your own reputation, which is what this is all about, it is better to know the answer yourself than to sort of say, well, give me 5 seconds and I'll make the phone call now. Can you hold the matter down as you run out? Anything further you have on that? Okay. Clients attending court without you being present, or without an agent being present.
Oh, you got to stop here. Has anyone ever been in court and you're sitting there and you're chit-chatting with other counsel, and the other counsel you're talking to all of a sudden stops and stares up, and there's an accused person sitting there, yeah, I've retained, and they indicate the lawyer you're talking to, and and they go on, and just by fluke they're there. And it happens all the time, and many times it happens when they're not there. And how do you protect yourself against that?
Well, and I'll give you another example. There's actually, counsel has sent a transcript to me of an individual who appeared in court with a letter from their counsel saying, you know, we need an adjournment to such and such a date. The clerk looked at the letterhead in that case and questioned it because they had seen the lawyer's previous letterhead. It was very different. Turns out the client had created the letter.
And it looked better than the lawyer's letterhead.
And
that's what gave it away.
That might have been what gave it away. And, you know, there's a situation where the client's gone ahead and done something on their own for their own reasons. Or they've represented that they've retained you and you're not yet retained. I think the best thing to do, if you cannot attend, you write to duty counsel, you send a letter on your letterhead to duty counsel. And you never let an opportunity go by without having done that, because at least then duty counsel can say, well, I have a letter and it says a different date or it has different information on it. And at least it's coming from your office's fax number. But I think that's one thing that you definitely have to be wary of. And acting as an agent for another lawyer, there's situations where you go to court and say, yeah, you know what, I'll speak to this matter for you. And then the client comes up and starts giving you a whole bunch of different information, asking you, no, but he was supposed to do a pretrial. Can you just make sure the brief goes there because the bail variation needs to be done and whatnot? Your instructions come from the lawyer. You are acting as agent for the lawyer, not agent for the client at that point in time. Don't do what the client says unless you've checked it with the lawyer. That lawyer has entrusted you. Work within the realms of their instructions, not the client's.
Absolutely.